Now bring in Joe Tacopina, attorney for former President Trump, was in the courtroom today. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
So first of all, your take on the proceedings today and what happened inside that courtroom.
Overall, pretty standard operating procedure, except the guy was sitting next to the President of the United States as opposed to a typical defendant. But there was an arraignment. He pled not guilty. He uttered the words himself, the president, which I thought was a good thing for him to do, and he wanted to do that. We had some discussion over, logistics of a protective order on some of the documents and a whole host of other things. We set a scheduled date for motions, and, now we proceed. But, obviously that was the only part. Once, we were inside the well of the courtroom, that was probably the only part of the day that was even remotely normal, if you could say that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the surreal nature of the day. I want to talk to you about the president's demeanor, but what about what you saw inside the 34 counts and how they structured it as you look on the inside and as it became as you became aware of it? What was your take on the specifics?
It was exactly as we expected, but what really wasn't expected is they were going to hand down an indictment without specifying what these alleged underlying crimes were. So every single count in this indictment, all 34, the same thing. It would normally be a misdemeanor, falsifying business records, which didn't happen, and that's going to be easy to prove, but it would be a misdemeanor. That would not be within the statute of limitations. We don't even know if the felony is in the statute of limitations, but the misdemeanor would be gone by years. So in order to make this a case that can survive a test of those statute of limitations, they had to bring this as a felony. And so the way they ramp up a misdemeanor falsifying business records charge to a felony one is to say that it was with intent to defraud or intent to commit another crime and aid and conceal the commission of another crime.
Right, which is the New York law. But are they doing it?
Crime was here.
Are they doing it to the federal? Are they doing it to the federal election law? Are they doing it to some other state New York law? What are they doing?
I mean, if you read this indictment, they could be doing it to a drunk driving case. I mean, honestly, that's how vague this thing is. But let's assume that it is to the federal election law, which it is going to be, I'm sure, when we get the bill of particulars. And if that's the case, well, then they missed the mark gravely, because federal election law makes it clear that the facts in this case do not equal a violation of federal campaign laws at all. The FEC has opined on that already. The Justice Department, the federal prosecutors have refused this case because of that. So, it's shocking to me that a state prosecutor would try and prosecute something as thin as this and prosecute a violation of federal election laws when they're state prosecutors, which further enhances the position we've taken all along that this is a political persecution, political prosecution, and the weaponization of the justice system, which honestly makes me ill.
Joe,
and it should not be happening in the United States of America.
We had some reporting that the judge or the prosecutors were concerned about some of the social media posts that the former president has made around this case, and that the judge read them from the prosecutors, and that he essentially warned if he saw more of this, he could reconsider instituting a gag order. Is that accurate?
Yeah, he didn't warn. He was actually very respectful to President Trump. He didn't warn him. He advised both sides, he said, against inflaming the passions any more than they have to be, doing something that could incite, crowd riots or violence right like that. He said that in a very sort of, boilerplate way to sort of address everyone. But he didn't warn the president. He didn't say, I'm going to impose a gag order. He didn't say anything like that. He just said, please don't do that if it continues to happen. Not to the president, by the way.
Yeah.
To both sides. If it continues to happen, there will be further discussions about it. It was really left unsaid. And look, I don't anticipate there being any problems going forward here.
And did the prosecutors bring up a possible conflict of interest with you because Stormy Daniels reached out to your law firm?
They did. They didn't bring it up as they believe there's a conflict of interest. They raised it, as I think they had to, with the judge as a potential conflict, and they had to cover themselves now. And then I stood up and made it very clear to the judge there is, and Brett, the one thing I'm sure about in this case, there's no conflict of interest. It's very clear on the law. It's New York Rules of Ethics 1-18 deals with duties to prospective clients. Understand this. I never met Stormy Daniels. I never spoke to Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels never hired me. She did call my law firm, spoke to an associate, sent over a document in regards to the possible, hiring of us as lawyers. My associate spoke to her once or twice or whatever when it was brought to my attention, when they were finished discussing it. I said, well, I'm not interested in that case in any way, shape, or form. And that was the end of it. She never hired me, never spoke to me, I never met her. So, of course, there's no conflict. But even if there were a conflict, and there isn't, it's been waived by Stormy Daniels. I mean, you understand the materials that I have to be substantially damaging to her. I don't have any materials.
Right.
It was an agreement that she put in her book. She wrote a book. So, you waive the conflict when you divulge private information that would be covered normally by an attorney-client privilege in a book. So there is absolutely no concern or issue. And the judge just, we made a record today. I don't think we're going to hear about this again.
Let me end it here. How do you describe the former president's demeanor? He looks very stoic as he's walking in, and in those pictures we have in the courtroom sitting next to you at the table. How do you describe it? Obviously, for a person going through this for the first time, not everybody's the former president of the United States, but what was his demeanor and his emotion around this day?
Look, he is as tough as you get. I mean, most people would be buckling at the knees. Not him. Most people, if they're running for office and they get indicted, would say, okay, I'm going to withdraw from the race and disappear from the planet Earth. Not him. He goes up to the polls and raises $7 million in 3 days because of that. But he's different, and he's strong and he's tough, and he has a determination in his eye right now that I saw that makes it clear that we're going to fight this all the way through, and we will fight all the way through. And I don't even think we'll get to a jury, Brett. Honestly, I mean that would be. That's where I make my living, and that's what I do. But I don't think we're going to get to a jury. I think this case is going to fall on the law way before we get there.
Joe Tacopina, we appreciate your time. A busy day in court today with the former president. Thanks for calling in.